The people have been in captivity in a foreign land for almost 70 years. They have cried out like the psalmist who said, "On the willows there we hung up our lyres. For our captors there required of us songs. For our tormentors mirth, singing, sing us one of the songs of Zion." But how could we sing? How could we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? Hundreds of thousands were taken from Israel to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. And now, and for the first 39 chapters of Isaiah, you hear their trials and tribulations. And then starting with the 40th is this word: comfort my people. Cyrus, king of Persia, is now knocking on the doors of the Babylonian Empire, about to overthrow it, and Cyrus is a benevolent potentate, if one can be, who usually releases the peoples that have been captured by those countries he conquers. It's time to go home. Comfort my people. Let them know that their time of punishment is over. Let them know their sins have been paid for. They can go home. And out of the hundreds of thousands that were exiled to Babylon, 42,000 of them actually came back. Only 42,000 came back. The rest stayed. Isn't that interesting? We can go home. Oh, that's okay. They've been there over 70 years. Hardly anyone who left Israel was still alive. Probably very few. There had been people that were born in captivity that had died in captivity. And there were people who were born in captivity who were now still alive, but were Babylonians. They had been born and raised in Babylon. They had jobs, they had houses, they had land. They didn't know what was going on back there. All they knew was that they hadn't been there a long time. Now, my family's been in this country since 1849. That's a little bit more than 100 years, but what if we decided just to go back to the Netherlands and claim our family home? The people living there might not like that. And that, excuse me, that may have gone through their minds too. And they had the great stories of Joshua and Abraham, and they knew the land was theirs, but there were people there. What about them? Their returning caused problems. Interestingly enough, in 1948, their returning there caused problems again that we still live with today with Israel and Palestine. And a young man that attended my church in Franklin, North Carolina, Iyad Youssef, who's Palestinian, his family had lived for a couple thousand years on the Mount of Olives, and when, after 1948, they had to leave their home so that the returning Israelis could live there. They weren't real happy about that, as one could understand. It would be like the Ottawas and the Potawatomis in Chippewa kicking us out of Michigan and saying, hey, this is our land. like that either. So this wondrous message of comfort, of safety, of security, of your home is yours again, go, was embraced by some, but not by all. The proclamation to prepare the way in the desert between Iran, where Babylon is, Iran now, and Israel, across the desert, make a road, lift up the low places, cut down the high places, get rid of the curves. We know how, we've seen enough construction this summer, we know how to make a highway. Especially if you're going to carry a king on a leader. You don't want to be going up and down hills too much. You want a nice flat road to carry the king, and this great procession, and as we prepare for the king to arrive, we realize that he may not come in a leader with, servants carrying it. He may just come in a barn and get put in a feed trough. I don't think that's what Isaiah had in mind. But he will come as a shepherd to lead his people. It's understandable to me with this prophecy from Isaiah, which clearly the early church immediately took as one foretelling the birth of Jesus. It's easy for me to see why everyone didn't really follow that. Even with Matthew's allusions to John and the voice in the wilderness crying, prepare a way for the king, a little change in punctuation. So the voice was in the wilderness rather than the road. Did you follow that? Did I mix you up on that one? See, Isaiah says, the voice cries out, in the wilderness, prepare a road. Matthew says, a voice cries out in the wilderness, prepare a road. You have to move the period is all. Of course, there's no punctuation in the codex that we translate from, but that's beside the point. Isaiah is expecting a king like Nebuchadnezzar and like Cyrus and those memories of Solomon and David, and he's not expecting what's coming. The people of Jesus' day were expecting a king to deliver them from Rome. A king who would take David's throne and reestablish the kingdom. They weren't expecting a baby in a manger. A vulnerable, completely dependent manifestation of God. Some of them got it. And a lot of them just stayed right where they were. Because they didn't realize what it meant to come home to this. Sometimes we want a king. We want somebody strong and mighty that's going to get rid of evil and make things right and make things just and make things fair. And we get one who calls us to feed people and give them drink and clothe them and visit them when they're sick and visit them in prison and help them in their need. We want the government to do that, so we don't have to. We want the king to take care of those things. And, in the long run, the king did take care of those things. He did feed the people and heal the sick and visit those in peril. He did reestablish the kingdom. He did overthrow Rome. It just wasn't the way we expected. As we prepare once again for that God to come, to rebuild the temple in our hearts, may we make wide the pathway, create that road so it's an easy journey for that baby to enter our heart.